Tell us a little bit more about the LOC. I guess, first of all, what does it look like as you're flying into it?
Well, you can tell it's been built and added onto quite a bit since the 50s. It's built into into the craters and into the rocky area to where it blends in somewhat. Some part of it is built into the rock. Very little of it is above ground.
Oh, okay.
Most of it I have not had access to. I have seen a diagram to where it is somewhat goes into a bell shape. Further and further down you go. And I've only had access to the upper levels.
So even though it's a bell shape, you don't actually see the bell on the surface of the moon?
No. It's like looking down at the top of the bell or the tip of a pyramid. You just see the smaller top, or the tip of the iceberg, I guess you would say. The rest is below and spreads out as it goes down.
If there are this many craft going to and from the LOC, and you say it's on the dark side of the moon, how could it possibly have been kept secret from us? Couldn't people with their telescopes see all these ships coming and going from the moon?
People do see that. There's actually another base on the backside of the moon that belongs to human beings. It belongs to one of the secret space programs called Dark Fleet that a lot of people see craft coming from. That I can give more of a location of that one. If you're looking at the moon, it's at about the 10 o'clock position. People have filmed and seen flurries and swarms of craft leaving and coming from that area quite a bit. Amateur astronomers with video cameras hooked up to their telescopes. This is something that has been seen.
When was the LOC actually built?
The LOC was built onto an existing Nazi facility that had been built in the latter parts of the 30s and 40s.
So it goes that far back? That far back.
Once the industrial might of the United States became involved, they really started putting a lot into it and built it out like crazy. They started really building in earnest in the late 50s on it. The moon is a very strict zone that is like a giant Switzerland. It's
strange that you would say that the moon is this neutral Switzerland type of area because it's right next to the Earth. If it's our moon, shouldn't it be our property and we get to have control over the moon?
No.
It doesn't work that way?
No. If you've seen sort of the maps of Antarctica, how it's stripped, it's sliced up amongst all the nations.
Yeah.
The back of the moon is that way too. And all these different regions are owned, pretty much owned and inhabited by different ET groups.
Really?
And there are some groups that have bad blood or have warred with each other going back many, many, many thousands of years. But they have installations that are just a couple kilometers away from each other. And they have been there for many thousands of years in peace. There's some sort of diplomatic agreement about the moon. There's something very special about the moon being a very diplomatic, neutral zone.
What is it like when you are in the LOC? Do they have like apartments that you can go to once you get inside? Is it just wide open conference rooms and little chairs? What happens when you go inside? Well,
until recently, I had never been to the VIP area. I had always been to just the area to where they have, small, kind of not really apartments, but small little dwellings to where it has, 2 to 4 bunks. The halls are real narrow. You move over to the VIP area, the halls are wider. There's wood paneling on the walls. like cherry wood, nice walls, very upscale. It's a dramatic change when you go from one area to the VIP area.
Could you wander around and try to find a restricted area, or do you have military escorts that lead you around? How does that work?
Well, you're allowed certain areas. There are marks on the paint lines on the floor, lines on the floor of different color that lead to different areas. And
so if you're red, then you just follow the red line to where it leads to?
Right. And like I said, I've only been the top floors where most of everything takes place. The bottom two, the next two floors were the medical and some other more advanced medical stuff take place. I have never been further down than those. There are some people recently that have been taken on a tour that have gotten to see a lot more than I have. There's some people that are stationed there and work there, but it's more of a way station. People are coming and going from it all the time to go to their further out into the solar system and beyond, to go out to other stations, other bases, to go out to their assigned vessels. What I've described as this Federation Super Council, this is a super federation made up of other federations, councils, and other different organizations and groups.
So hence the word
confederations, right. I've heard used, and it's kind of like a giant UN of all of these different federations, confederations, councils that come to meet. And there are 40 main groups with 20 other groups that are there a fair amount of the time, but not all the time. Now, these groups are more of the human-looking, human type. And their bases seem to be mainly on the back of the moon and on moons of some of the gas giants, especially Saturn. So much so that there are areas around certain moons of Jupiter and Saturn that our vessels were completely forbidden from going anywhere near. And this is in our own solar system. We were, these areas were off limits.
Our vessels meaning your Solar Warden faction?
The secret space program.
Right. So whatever faction it was.
All of Earth's secret space programs were not allowed. No Earth space vessels were allowed within a certain distance of these moons. There were 22 genetic programs that were going on.
What does that mean? What's a genetic program?
Programs of them mixing their genetics and manipulating our genetics. The information was presented as if, almost as if, going back to the college analogy, there were 22 term papers competing with each other, and each of these genetic experiment programs were presenting their information in that manner. They were somewhat competing with each other. They weren't all working, they weren't all kind of hand in glove working together.
Did this involve these human-looking extraterrestrials?
Yes.
Splicing their DNA with ours, that kind of thing?
Yes. And manipulating our DNA. There was also a spiritual component. They are very much involved in a part of the experiment. It's not just them experimenting on us. They're a part of this grand experiment too.
Did they have a goal? Why are they doing this? Why do they care?
That I do not know. I don't know if they're doing it just because they can, if they're trying to create some sort of super being, but a lot of it didn't, why would they try to create, mix all of their best genetics together and then manipulate us and our civilization to keep us down?
How long do you think this program has been in action for?
Of the 22 different programs, they've been going on for different lengths of time, but the genetic manipulation of what we are has been going back at least 250,000 years.
Wow.
But these programs they vary in their length from 5,000 they're all different lengths of time.
This doesn't sound like something that our secret Earth government or elected government would want these folks to be doing. Could we stop them?
I don't think so. I mean, this is something that we've just recently been able to beg to get a seat at their table, to be a part of the discussion.
So would these be negative-oriented extraterrestrials or more neutral? Not really the benevolent type?
It depends on your point of view. It's all amount of it's perspective. It's hard to say this group is positive, this group is negative out of all those groups, because they see what they're doing as a positive thing.
Tell us a little bit more about the LOC. I guess, first of all, what does it look like as you're flying into it?
Well, you can tell it's been built and added onto quite a bit since the 50s. It's built into...
On the surface of the moon?
No, it's like looking down at the top of the bell or the tip of a pyramid. You just see the smaller top. Or the tip of the iceberg, I guess you would say. The rest is below and spreads out as it goes down.
If there are this many craft
had access to. I have seen a diagram to where it is somewhat goes into a bell shape. Further and further down you go. And I've only had access to the upper levels.
So even though it's a bell shape, you don't actually see the bell?
Into the craters and into the rocky area to where it blends in somewhat. Some part of it is built into the rock. Very little of it is above ground.
Oh, okay.
Most of it I have not